today we are going to start off on the coding part of the project. We are going to do the Auth system. It is going to be done using Firebase, and we are going to implement a feature which will allow us to see if the user that's currently logged in is truly the user. So we are going to verify the token with Firebase and do all of that, those things. So to get started, we are actually going to create a Firebase project and activate the authentication using Google Auth, because we are not going to use email and password as we did in the previous series. We are going to use the Google Auth. That way you can sign in using your Google account. So to do that, I'm going to jump right into my Firebase dashboard. Let me just open this up. Okay, I'm going to add a new project, and it is going to be AIRBNB. Continue. Enable analytics. Yeah, sure. United States, that's good. Everything seems fine. Creating the project, and it will take some time, but yeah, it shouldn't take long. Okay, continue. Right now, I'm going to go into authentication, and I'm going to set up sign-in method. It is going to be obviously Google. Save. Set up a support email. Yeah, yep. This is what we are going to use, but right now I'm just going to click save and continue. We'll take care of the API keys later. And then I'm going to go into the Google API console, because there's some information there that we are going to need in order to actually authenticate the user. So I'm going to go into credentials. Wait a second. And in here, you'll see that we have the IDs of the client Auth 2.0. And I'm sorry, this is in Portuguese. I'm going to try to change this for the next lesson, but right now you can keep up and see where I'm clicking, and you'll quite easily understand what I'm doing. Okay, so now these are the credentials that we'll use in our project. Okay, so now I'm going to jump into the project itself, now that we have both of the things that we need. So all of this. And in here, we'll actually need the admin, but I'll do it later. And I'm going to jump into the front end of the project. I'm going to app, client, app, console, components, and I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it simply login. Okay, and in here, I'm going to have a new file called login.js. And we are going to place our login page in here. Okay. So in order to call this login page, I'm going to go into index.js, and in here you'll see that we have some things called routes. So the routes are the links, and are the links that and the way that React deals with it. So for example, in this route we have the home, and you'll see that the path is just a slash. This means that our URL, let's say airbnb.com is our URL. Then if you type airbnb.com into the browser, the home component will show up. So if we want for the user to type airbnb.com/login, and that take us to the login page, we'll simply say, let's double that, say login, and then we want the login component, which we haven't created yet. So to create it, simply go in here and say import login from, open quotes, say components /login /login. Okay, it's as easy as that. Now, whenever we type login, this page will appear. But right now, this page doesn't have anything, right? So I'm going to quickly just copy the home.js, which is in here, and it has the bare bones part of the app, and simply paste in here. And I'm going to say login just to see if everything is as it should be. So I'm going to quickly jump into the AIRBNB clone. Let me just check. It should be in here somewhere. I believe it is the AIRBNB one. No, it isn't. Shoot. Let me check. AIRBNB clone. Okay. There we go. Clear. Going to zoom in. And in order to start up the server, as we saw in the previous lesson, we must open up a different terminal and say sudo mongod. Place your password. It will start up right away. Don't forget the sudo, otherwise it will throw an error, because it always does. And in the other page, simply do sudo npm run start ..dev. This will quickly start up the server and launch our web page. And we'll see if the login route is really pointing to the login page, which is what we wanted out of this. Okay, we have a link, but just wait a couple more seconds for it to compile. Yeah, it is compiled. Okay, we have the home page, and now if you go in here and change it to login, as you can see, we move to the login page, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so now I'm going to quickly add a couple of packages, which are, and I'm going to stop the server for this, the npm I Firebase, and this will install the Firebase package and give it a couple of minutes. Okay, so after that has finished downloading, simply do npm I Firebase UI. This is just so that we can have the buttons of the Google authentication, so it isn't that necessary, but it is always good to have. Okay, that's done importing. Now let's jump right into the login.js. And I'm going to quickly remove the router because I'm not going to need it right now. And I'm going to import both Firebase and Firebase UI. So Firebase from Firebase, and then the Firebase UI. And we are going to import the styled Firebase Auth part of the Firebase UI. So to do that, it's really simple. You simply do import styled Firebase UI from React Firebase UI / styled Firebase Firebase Auth. And now that I remember, we need to import another package which is the React Firebase UI. npm I React Firebase UI. Okay, that's done. I'm sorry about that. I completely forgot about it. And now we can simply come in here in the render, because, and I'm going to explain a bit how React works. You have the constructor, which you obviously should know anytime this is called, which should be login and not home. And the export default should also be login. Whenever it is called, the constructor is the first function to get called, and we can initialize everything through here. Okay? Then we have here the component did mount. This is what we are going to use whenever, and I'm going to simplify this a lot. So if you want to know more, please go to the resources, the documentation. But the component did mount is whenever the component is live and functioning, you can actually call, it is going to be called. As you can read here, it is called immediately after a component is mounted. Okay, So it will re-render the page anytime a component is mounted. So we are going to actually call a lot of our functions through here, a lot of our API calls. And we are going to update values in those API calls, and those API calls are going to re-render our web page and update the values that need to be updated. Okay, so, but I'm going to leave that on the side for now. We are going to use it in a second, but for now I'm just going to place the styles Firebase auth element here. I'm going to close it, right? As you can see, it is Firebase UI, I'm sorry. So I'm just going to copy that and place it there. Okay, yeah, that's right. And in here, we are going to do a bunch of things, but right now it is what we are going to use this for is to show the login buttons. But we only want the Google button. And you might ask, how can we do that? Well, to do that, we are going to come back to our browser, and we are going to come to this page. So Firebase UI web. This link is very important. It is going to be down in a comment in the description section. I'm going to scroll all the way down until I find this piece of code. Okay, I'm going to simply copy it, and I'm going to place it up top. I'm going to zoom out a bit, and this is the UI config. So this tells, this is going to tell the styled Firebase auth everything it needs to know in order to display the buttons. So as you can see here, you have a lot of providers: Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, email, and phone. Because we only need the Google Auth provider, we are going to clear all of them up, except for the Google Auth. Okay, I'm going to remove the links because they get in the comments because they get a bit in the way. Okay, so that's it. And then I'm going to sign in flow. This is just so that the API knows if it wants to show a pop-up or it is directly in the browser. I'm going to leave it in the redirect as a redirect. This will make it so that whenever you click the button, it is going to redirect you to the Google API and then come back to our page. Okay. So sign in successful. I'm going to move the user straight to the home page. This is what it is going to say. We don't need the last two parts, so I'm going to quickly remove them. Okay. Then the UI shown, I'm also going to remove because we don't need it at the moment. We are going to use the sign-in success with auth result because it contains the token of the login. It contains all of the information of the user as it is in the Google servers, and we are going to use that information to create a new document for the user. So a new specific part in the database for the user, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well. Okay, I'm going to remove these comments here. So I'm going to do add API call to save user, and it is to save user or not. If the user exists, then we are not going to resave it. Okay. Now, going back down to the styled Firebase UI, I'm going to simply say UI config, and our UI config is called UI config, which is this one right here. Okay? And then I'm going to call the Firebase auth, which is going to be equal to firebase.auth. This is just the parameters that this part of the code needs. So yeah, you have to do it, otherwise it won't work. Then in the component did mounts, we are going to do, as you might be familiar if you come from our previous series, an auth state listener. So to do this, I'm simply going to say firebase.auth like this. Dot on auth state listener. I'm going to say user, and then call and then change the state of this component. Close that up. Open here. That's it. So I'm going to say this dot set state, and I'm going to explain the set state in a second, is authenticated 2 points, and now negate the this dot state dot is authenticated. Okay, and as you may remember, I said that in the constructor, or better yet, in a component inbound, whenever a variable changes, it is going to re-render the screen. Okay, so this is what we are going to do. This is what we are doing right now. So we are saying that when the auth changes, we are going to set a variable is authenticated to the negated form of it. So if it is false, it is going to be true, and if it is true, it is going to be false. This is going to make a trigger, and everything will re-render after that. But most importantly, we are going to use this in order to simply move on. Okay, so, and it will allow us also to know if the user is already logged in, and if the user is already logged in, we are going to straight move on to the next page. So in the beginning, in the constructor, we are going to say this state equals to open brackets is authenticated equals to false, which is the normal form of it. Okay, and I'm going to not do anything else in here, and as you can see, we are done. Now the only thing that's missing, and this is, I have two also. Oh, okay, that's the problem. UI, just that. Okay, and now, as you can see, we don't have an API call. We are going to take care of that in a second, but first of all, we need to initialize Firebase in here. So I'm simply going to say Firebase dot initialize app, open brackets, open parentheses, and then brackets, and I'm going to say API key 2 points, quotation mark, and I'm going to quickly jump into our Firebase dashboard, project settings, and I'm going to grab this web API key. Place it there, and then I'm going to say off domain 2 points again, and I'm going to grab this project ID. We say the project ID dot firebaseapp.com. Don't forget the comma there, otherwise it won't work, obviously. Okay, so now we are ready to run. Let me just check. In here, it isn't equal, it is 2 points. Yeah, don't forget that, otherwise there will be an error. And I'm going to quickly run the server again. It should run without any problems, let's hope. And as you can see, in the login page, there is the sign in with Google. If we click it, we'll see that the domain is not authorized. And to fix this, simply go in here and add the 0.0.0.0 to the list. Okay, simply come in here and say HTTP 2 points / 0.0.0.0. Okay, and in the redirects, I'm also going to add the localhost. Okay, click enter on both of them and save. This is because we are in testing phase. If you were not and you were for production, then you had to add your domain URL there. Okay, but right now it should work. And it is still not updated, but yeah, give it a couple of minutes and it should be fine. Okay, so now moving on, I'm going to actually start working on the back end of this part. So we are going to create a new user and verify if the user is authenticated or not. Okay, and for that I'm going to go into the, not the config file, I'm going to close this up, go into the server and modules and routes API to be more precise. I'm going to open up the placeholder.js that's in the models, and I'm going to rename it to user.js. Okay, and in the user.js, we are going to create a model for it. So the model is, as I've said in the previous lesson, like kind of like an object that MongoDB can read. So we define a couple of parameters, attributes in this case, for that specific object. And we can say if an object, for example, has an attribute that has to be unique. We can even set up cryptic attributes like passwords and hashes and everything like that. So yeah, we can go from there. So in order to create a model, what you have to do is say const mongoose equals to require mongoose. Okay, then moving on, say const schema equals to mongoose.schema, and then say mongoose.promise equals to promise with a big P in there. Okay, so now in order to actually create a schema, this is just all of the imports that we must do. We'll say const user schema equals to new schema, open parentheses, open brackets, and now we create the object. So for example, we want the user to have a name, obviously. So we say name, which is the name of the attribute, and then we say the type of the attribute inside brackets, curly brackets. In this case, it is going to be string. And we can say that it is not unique, so false, comma, and I'm going to do this a bunch of times. So for the email, it is also string, but I'm going to say that it is unique, so true. And the Google ID that we are going to get from the auth call, we'll say that it is unique as well. And that's basically it. We could add a couple more like photo URL and other things, but to keep it simple, I'm going to keep these attributes for now. Then at the end of the user schema, we can simply say user, say with a small u, equals to mongoose.model, open brackets, user schema, module.exports equals to user. And it might sound like a bit of code to write, but the thing is, when you write one schema, most of the other schemas are going to be basically the same, so you can copy and paste, except if they have some particularities that you have to place in, like full text search and things like that. But in this case, you don't have it, so it's as simple as that. Okay, and now let's start actually using this schema in order to record users in the database and to find users in the database. So I'm going to go inside APIs in the placeholder.js, and I'm going to rename it to auth.js. Okay, as easy as that. I'm going to, first of all, import the user schema. So const user model equals to require, open brackets, open parentheses, better yet. And I'm going to go back twice, going to the folder models and say user. Okay, that's it. Now we are going to need yet another package, which is called Firebase admin. So npm I Firebase admin. And it is going to take some time to install, but this package is what's going to allow us to verify if a user is true or not by comparing the token with the user ID or email. We'll check that in a second. Okay, so now that's done. I'm going to jump right back into our project, and I'm going to go inside our Firebase settings, into service accounts, because there's a file that we are going to need. And that file is in here, so you generate new private key. It is going to be downloaded, save the file. And now simply in your Visual Studio, simply create a folder called config inside server. So in here, config, and I'm going to quickly open this up, and I'm going to drag that file inside there, inside config. Okay. That's done. Now we can simply call that, because that's what's going to allow us to mess with our own database, and not database because we are not going to use the Firebase database, but the Auth system as a whole. So let's say service account equals to require, and again let's go back twice, 2 points, config. And now we need this name, so let me just grab it all, okay, and place it there. Okay, that's it. Now we have to, first of all, import the Firebase admin. I'm going to simply call it admin. Say require Firebase admin. Okay, that's it. Now, in order to initialize it, we have to do the initialize app just as we did in the front end. So let's say admin.initialize app, and I'll simply say credential, and this is a bit different. We have to say admin.credential.certs, and then place the service account in here. Okay, that's it. Then go to the bottom line, place comma, and say database URL, and this database URL is just the same as this one. So you can simply come in here and grab it, but it has one small difference, which is in the end of the link, and I'm going to show you right now. But first of all, paste it. It isn't Firebase app, it will be Firebase IO. Okay, that's it. Now we are ready to start using the Firebase admin, and we are going to create our first API endpoint. We are going to say app.post API auth slash, and I'm going to call it verify user, because this function is going to do a lot of things. So if the user, it is first going to check if the user is truly logged in, comparing the token using a function that Firebase gives us. And if the user is the first time, it's the first time that the user logs in, then we are going to create an entry for the user in the database. Okay, so to create an endpoint, you simply say the link that it is going to have. You say if it is post or get or any of the others. and simply say rec, comma res, comma next, even though we are not going to use it, but let's place it anyway. Open curly brackets, and in here we are going to call a function that we are going to create in a second, but for now let's simply call it, and we are going to call it verify account. This is going to verify if the token is real or not. Open parentheses, rec function callback. Okay, open curly brackets, and now return whatever value this callback gives us. So send callback. Okay, and the reason why I'm creating a function for this is because this function is going to be used a lot throughout the app. So whenever we do a post or a GET request, we are going to verify if the token is real or not. So yeah, so imagine whenever we make a post request, we are the user is always going to send the token ID, and we are going to use that to verify if the user is real or not. So that we don't mess the app. Just a layer of security for the project. Okay, now going down, I'm simply going to say verify account. I'm going to create the function equals to rec, comma, callback equals bigger than curly brackets, and there we go. We are set to create our function. So the first thing that we have to decide is which params are we going to retrieve from the user. So whenever the user makes an API call in here, what is the user going to send us? Well, we need two things. We need the token of the auth that the user just did, the login or registration, wherever. And we need the user information that Google provides us. Okay? So in order to get that information from the params that are in the API call, we are simply going to say const query, that's right, equals to rec. Okay? Then, moving on, we are going to say const token equals to query. And this is going to automatically attribute the variable token with the parameter token, whose name is token. Then we are going to do exactly the same, so I'm actually going to copy this, but for the user. This is going to be the user information, like name, email, Google ID, and so on and so forth. Okay? Now we are going to parse the user data into a JSON, because right now it is in a string and it isn't that comfortable to use. So I'm going to say user JSON equals to JSON.parse user. This is equal, not a zero. There we go. And now we are going to call a function which will check if the token is real or not. So admin.auth.verify ID token, and the ID token is in user JSON user JSON not that .sts token manager .access token. And for now I'm going to leave it at that. I'm simply going to say then. I'm going to explain this in a second, so don't worry. Function decoded token. Okay, that's it. I'm going to open curly brackets and close it and say console.log user verified. I'm going to scatter a bunch of console logs in here. Verifying user, and in here say this is being called. So I'm going to run this as is. I'm not going to create a new user by now. I'm just going to see if everything works out and if everything checks out. So I'm going to quickly save this. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to npm run start dev. Okay, so I found a problem with our current system, and the thing is, in the user schema, in here I said mongoose.schema like this, but it is a capital S, otherwise it won't work. Another thing I realized is that we aren't actually making a call to our API, so we aren't calling this anywhere. So I'm going to take care of that before we actually run it. And for that, I'm going to go back to the client, app, components, login.js, and we are actually going to need a new library, and this time it's Axios. So npm I Axios. Axios will allow us to easily make API calls and any kind of request that we want quite easily with just a few characters. Yeah, we just need 2 lines of code basically, and it is extremely easy, and that's why I use it. I believe it is really good. So yeah, there are other options out there, but for this project I'm going to go with Axios. Okay, so after that's done, I'm going to first of all save here and go to the auth.js, no, login.js, that's right. So this is our front end, and in here, as you remember, we have the sign-in success with auth result, and I added a to-do here, and I said add API call to save user. So to do this, we simply have to import Axios first from Axios, and then in here say Axios dot post, because we are going to do a post request, and now we place in here and we can remove this, we paste in here this link, and it will automatically make a call for this link. Okay, then we pass null, and finally we pass the params. So the params in this case are going to be user and Firebase dot auth in parentheses dot current user. And because we are going to pass all of the user's information, we are actually going to manage to delete a line in our backend, and you'll see it in a second. So for now, let's just say dot then res, and in here simply say console log dot res to see the response of the server. This is what this res is. It is going to do the function, and then it's going to return the res from the backend. Okay, we are able to save it now. And we are actually going to remove this token because right now we aren't going to need it. But I'm going to print the user JSON in here. Okay, I'm going to just make this a bit prettier so that we can easily understand it. Put it under bars like that, and now we should be able to run it. So npm run start dev. Okay, so I ran the app and it is working, but I forgot one thing, and that thing is in your Firebase dashboard. You have to come into authorized domains and add 0.0.0 in here as well. This was a big mistake on mine. I should have started with that, but now it is working without any problem. So if I come to the MERN boilerplate, can simply go to login, sign in with Google, Give it a second. And now, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not preserving logs, am I? Yeah, I have to persist logs and do it again. Sign in with Google again. And it is still not showing. Yes, it is. I'm going to show you here. Okay, so I'm blurring most of the parts of this terminal because it is my own account. But as you can see, user verified is at the bottom. This means that the user has successfully logged in, and we are able to verify that the user is actually logged in. This is important because the backend and frontend are both completely separated, so we have to check it somehow, and this is the way. So I'm going to leave this lesson at that. I'm not going to use the create the user yet. I thought about it in the beginning, but it is taking so much time that I believe it is better to separate. This is the login. Then we are going to actually create an entry for the user, and it is going to be a much shorter video at that. So yeah, that's all for today. Everything is working as it should be. We are able to log in a user. And one more thing that I'm going to show you guys is if I come in here in the authentication, go to users, you'll see that my email is there. So yeah, everything is working as it should be, and the user was created successfully. So yeah, that's all. I'm going to work rapidly on the next episode because they come in together really nicely, and it is useless to log in a user if you can't save info on it. So yeah, that's all for today. I hope to see you again tomorrow, and ciao.